All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into something absolutely fascinating, the anatomical exodus, unlocking the biological cipher. We're going to dive deep into this esoteric theory that suggests ancient sacred texts and symbols aren't just historical accounts. No, they might actually be highly sophisticated allegorical maps of your very own human anatomy. We're looking through a lens called occult anatomy. This whole perspective basically argues that stories like the biblical Exodus are actually deeply encoded biological manuals. They're describing this physiological journey of your vital life force as it moves through the human nervous system. It is a completely different way to look at antiquity, and it brilliantly bridges science, biology, and ancient myth. So to start peeling the onion on this massive mystery, we have to ask a fairly obvious question. Why do globally recognized health organizations, we're talking the World Health Organization, the American Medical Association, why do they use a snake wrapped around a stick as their main symbol? I mean, you see it on ambulances and hospitals literally everywhere. To figure out where this bizarre imagery truly originates, we actually have to travel back to a really baffling sequence of events in the biblical book of Numbers. Let's take a look at the exact text that kicked off this whole mystery.
Okay, notice the stark contradiction here. It creates this incredible narrative tension about what this bronze healing serpent is actually supposed to be. Because on one hand, you have this strict foundational law, make no graven images, period. Yet just a little later in the story, the Israelites are being bitten by fiery serpents, and the mandated divine cure is to build a bronze statue of a serpent, put it on a pole, and just look at it to be healed. A literal reading of this leaves us with a huge paradox, right? The divine solution is the exact thing that was previously forbidden. Well, the plot definitely thickens when King Hezekiah eventually has to take a hammer to this very bronze artifact. Why? Because the people actually started burning incense to it. They were worshiping the physical object itself. Now think about it. If a higher power commanded its creation, but the best king in Israel's history had to literally smash it because it became an idol, something just doesn't add up. Unless it was never meant to be taken literally in the first place. This esoteric theory suggests this is exactly what happens when a biological metaphor is completely misunderstood as a literal physical object of worship.
And that brings us to this brilliant quote, which perfectly illustrates the ultimate puzzle. In the Gospel of John, Jesus compares himself directly to this destroyed idol. He hints that lifting up the serpent means something entirely different from what we've all been told. By identifying the Son of Man with this widely misunderstood, smashed-up statue, the text is heavily pointing toward an internal physiological process. Lifting up isn't about hoisting a piece of metal on a wooden stick. It's about elevating something within your own body. The whole cipher really unlocks when we realize this mind-blowing number perfectly bridges everything together. 33. It bridges the 33 years of Christ's life, the 33rd degree of Freemasonry, and, get this, the 33 vertebrae sitting inside your back right now. The number 33 is literally everywhere in ancient mystery traditions. It represents the structural ladder of the human body. It acts as the biological roadmap for this entire theory. The journey of the Exodus, the lifting of the serpent, it is all happening right there, encoded in your spinal column. According to this esoteric framework, the pole is your spine, and the serpent? That is the raw, dormant life force, which Eastern traditions often call Kundalini, just waiting to be picked up and elevated. Think of it like mastering a live wire. In the stories, when Moses grabs the serpent by the tail, it becomes a rigid, upright rod. That is a metaphor for mastering the electrical impulses of your own nervous system and intentionally drawing that energy upward. So this vital journey starts at the very basement of your anatomy, down in the pelvis. The foundational bone of your spine is the sacrum. Now, medically speaking, os sacrum literally translates from Latin to sacred bone. It is absolutely incredible that modern medicine still uses a term derived directly from ancient cultures who independently revered this exact physical location as the seat of the soul and the literal starting point for biological resurrection. Now, if we look at this physiological map, the bondage of Egypt isn't an actual place on a map. It corresponds to your lower digestive and generative organs, and it's ruled by Pharaoh. Pharaoh represents an unbalanced ego that traps our vital energy in basic survival mode and sensory indulgence. So when the Israelites cry out for liberation from the mud and brick of Egypt, what does that mean for us today? The theory posits that it's actually your higher aspirations trying to break free from the heavy, restrictive habits of your lower animal nature. Moving up the anatomical ladder, we find a really fascinating linguistic clue. The Latin root for our word spine is spina, and originally that translates to thorn. This reveals a hidden, almost brilliant anatomical pun woven into ancient myth. The famous crown of thorns isn't just about a brutal punishment, it's a physiological diagram. It represents the energy of the spina, the spine, successfully reaching the cranium and literally crowning the skull with awakened consciousness.
As this life force ascends the spine, the story says it wanders in the wilderness for 40 years. Well, esoteric physiology views the specific number as the biological time required to deconstruct old habits and wire entirely new neural pathways. Whether it's 40 days of rain, 40 days on a mountain, or 40 years in the desert, this number universally symbolizes a period of testing and neuroplasticity. It's the literal death of the old self and old cellular memories to make way for a highly refined, elevated state of being. Let's move to the neck and see how this builds. Leaving the lower body consciousness of Egypt means you have to cross a major biological boundary. The parting of the Red Sea metaphorically represents crossing the diaphragm and opening the thalamic gate right at the brainstem. Think of your reticular activating system kind of like a biological bouncer at a club, filtering out overwhelming sensory stimuli. Through controlled breathing and absolute stillness, this bouncer steps aside. It parts, allowing that dormant energy to finally flood into the higher brain centers. When we overlay the meticulous, incredibly specific blueprints of the ancient temple onto human anatomy, a literal map emerges. The layout of the tabernacle tracks perfectly with this ascension of consciousness. You start at the lower body with the brazen altar, move up through the emotional centers at the laver, into the heart with the altar of incense, and it all culminates in the Holy of Holies, the Ark of the Covenant, which rests squarely in the brain's third ventricle. Following this anatomical map all the way up, we reach the summit. And it is no coincidence at all that the life force's journey up the 33 vertebrae of the pole culminates precisely at the skull, which is the highest physical point of the human body. The narrative explicitly states that Jesus, at age 33, was crucified at Golgotha. And what does Golgotha literally translate to? The place of the skull. The story is telling us exactly where this biological alchemy achieves its final result, right inside your own head. And this brings us to the real climax of the narrative. Using scripture, it dramatically introduces the pineal gland. This is a tiny, pine cone-shaped organ sitting at the exact geometric center of your brain. Ancient wisdom refers to it as the single eye. Now, biologically, it's packed with piezoelectric crystals. These are microscopic structures that actually generate an electrical charge when put under pressure. When they are stimulated by the upward pressure of cerebrospinal fluid, they act like a literal biological antenna for higher frequencies and profound insight. So entering the promised land flowing with milk and honey, that is interpreted here as a magnificent biochemical upgrade. Once that pineal gland is activated, it releases incredibly powerful metabolites. The milk is serotonin and melatonin, bringing deep rest and physiological sweetness. The honey represents amber-colored compounds like DMT, which serve as a biological key to transcendent, superconscious experiences. It is a literal orchestra of neurochemistry, elegantly disguised as poetic, agricultural metaphors. This takes a highly complex, esoteric concept and turns it into a totally clear, actionable biological procedure for cellular regeneration. The theory of the sacred secretion, or the Christ oil, outlines a monthly cycle. Your brain generates a fluid that travels all the way down the spine. If you maintain self-control and avoid living in pure survival mode, you preserve this seed. Then, through stillness and breathwork, you push it back up those 33 vertebrae, where it finally activates the pineal gland. It is a complete physical blueprint for awakening. To see just how universal this framework really is, we only need to look at entirely independent cultures across millennia. Whether it's the jade pillar in Egypt, the caduceus in Greece, the Kundalini serpent in Hinduism, or Mayan depictions of serpents connecting sacred skulls, they are all describing the exact same human anatomy. They all trace this dormant energy rising up the spine to illuminate the brain, pointing to a globally understood biological reality. It's truly mind-blowing when you put it all together. So, bridging all this ancient scriptural wisdom with modern neuroscience, the practical application is actually beautifully simple. It's a universal instruction manual for your own biology. Quiet the nervous system and sit in stillness. By sitting in a dark room with a straight spine, closing your eyes and breathing deeply, you stimulate the vagus nerve. This literally shifts your body out of the stress of Egypt and into the promised land of rest, restore, and profound internal healing.
I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder as you consider the magnificent, integrated biological temple that is your very own body. For thousands of years across totally disconnected continents, humanity has encoded the exact same physiological map into its most revered sacred texts and symbols: the pole, the serpent, the single eye. The tools for transformation? They aren't external at all. They are woven right into your very own nervous system. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep exploring the incredible design within.